Today we will be exploring the basic framework by good wholesome Christian necromancy. Let us begin. I am Dave the Amateur Magus. On this channel I talk all about the mechanics behind ceremonial magic, occultism, esotericism, and the mechanics behind everything you can find within a dusty old grimoire. If you do enjoy what I do here and you want to support the channel, link in the description of the Patreon where you can get exclusive access to Patreon content, such as videos early, Patreon exclusive content, and the Occultic Manual series, which is a monthly write-up that I aim at being more instructional than what I have here on the channel, but less unapproachable than an old grimoire. If that sounds of interest to you, link in the description. I've also added 2 new tiers for those who want to support me above and beyond. If any of that sounds of interest to you, looking forward to seeing you there, and if you're already supporting me on Patreon, you have my thanks for your continued and ongoing support. So, let's get into the necromancy. Now, the word necromancy is actually a form of divination. Mancy from Greek is a form of divination, and specifically necromancy is the divination by asking the dead how the future is going to go, because it was believed that the dead were kind of at a weird crossroads where they have been in the living, but they have crossed over to the world of the dead, and they can kind of, if you call them up and you try to communicate with them, they can tell you how the future is going to go, because only the living is bound by time and, past, present, and future. So they can see the future because they're dead, effectively. They have the benefits of being formerly human, but now they're dead. That kind of changes over time, and that word really isn't what we mean when we say necromancy in the modern age. That is definitely not what we mean when we say it in terms of ceremonial magic. And in fact, the modern definition, according to Merriam-Webster, is the conjuration of spirits of the dead for purposes of magically revealing the future or influencing the course of events, which is a thaumaturgical operation if you have been paying attention to my channel. So, when we are doing necromancy, we are going ahead and we are conjuring the spirits of the dead in order to get them to do things or to tell us the future. And this is quite effective. This is a bit of an interesting problem. So, the reason why this is effective is because the spirits of the dead have already been here. Simple as that. The spirits of the dead have a lingering influence on the material realm, more than, say, angels who have never truly incarnated. Elementals have a quite strong grasp on the physical world. However, spirits of the dead are here. If we think of bones, they are a lingering presence. They are a physical reminder to us that they were here. So they don't need to go through manifesting through, 8 layers of existence. We typically like to look at the stars. Planetary magic, the reason we use the planetary invocations is to pull that influence down. But when you're trying to enact work, you are going to, ideally, the daemon of that spirit, or of that planetary power, and that is going to be a entity that is much closer to the physical realm than, say, the archangels, who are much closer to the divine sphere. They are the messengers of the Most High, after all, and those messengers of the Most High have to go through a lot of bureaucracy. Cutting out the middleman, we go to necromancy. In olden times, before demonic evocation was the go-to, necromancy for a period of time was the primary method of thaumaturgy in the Western ceremonial magic sphere. And the reason for this was because it was considered less evil. Because, you see, in the Catholic Church, which was the dominant religion at the time, there was a theory that people whose souls were in hell could be redeemed by going and doing, if you were to pray for intercession of these spirits, you would be able to get the person into heaven. So effectively what they are doing is you are allowing them to, in death, repent for their sins by acts of service, and the transaction that you are giving them is you are praying for their souls to go into heaven. And this was considered to be a very profitable and a very worthwhile endeavor, because what would happen is you would go, hey, spirits of the recently deceased who are in purgatory or in hell, depending on which, depending on what you believe. at certain periods of time, the Catholic Church doesn't believe in purgatory. They believe that you just go straight to hell. But you would still be able to pray for the intercession, and you would be able to pray on behalf of the individuals, and they would be able to be allowed to go into heaven. Usually you would do some deed on their behalf, and that would assist in them going to heaven. So what you would do is you would conjure the spirits of the deceased, and then you would make a deal with them. And the deal would be, I want you to make this thing happen in my life. See, we're now going to the second part of that definition we got from Merriam-Webster of, or influencing the course of events. You are using the spirits of the dead who have human minds and human ideals and human understandings of the way the world works, and you are using those people in order to cause change in accordance to your will. And the payment for this, when it was rendered, would be that when this thing happened, you would then pray for their souls to go into heaven, and ideally their souls would go into heaven. If they were particularly nasty, you might create a bit of a working relationship with them until at some point in the future, their souls are finally redeemed, they are cleansed of their sins, and they have repented enough or done enough good deeds in death, and they have gone up to heaven. Now, the actual way you would do this in a Christian or a Western context is you would call up some kind of psychopomp spirit, usually of mercurial persuasion. A common one is the Archangel Michael, and you would then proceed to get the Archangel Michael to bring the shade of the actual person. This is the lower spirit that is left behind. And this shade would be able to assist you because it is the lingering influence on the physical world that this spirit has. Now, when you go ahead and you call up these spirits, you are able to get them to do things, and we are able to do the transaction that I just discussed. There is another form of necromancy that I need to discuss now, because a lot of you are probably thinking, oh, wait a minute, isn't this... How does this relate to ancestor work? Because ancestor work is working with the spirits of the dead. They're just your ancestors. And that is where we have the million-dollar question. Ancestor work, technically, is a form of necromancy. The difference is that you don't really need to go through a psychopomp nearly as much. It does help, but you can usually just call up the spirits of the ancestors in order to deal with this. Now, usually people will have some kind of ancestor altar if ancestor work is a major part of their practice. This has been a thing in every single culture that has done ancestor work. You have the South American Magick that uses ancestor work. The Day of the Dead specifically has a lot of ancestor stuff going on there. However, you also have the Old Norse going in and asking the spirits of the ancestors to assist them when they go into battle. There is a lot of... Every single culture has some form of ancestral spirit concept. It is not native to any one part of the world. Everyone has the spirits of the ancestors as a concept. And being the dead, they technically fall under the category of necromancy, though a lot of people seem to want to separate them from necromancy, and the reason for this is because usually, if you just look at what I've described here, we have two very different methodologies of dealing with the spirits of the dead. We have the version where we are going ahead and we are calling up a spirit using a psychopomp in order to get what we want, and the other one is effectively picking up the phone and calling your grandma, your deceased grandma, and all of the relatives that come with your, necromantic ancestor work, but it is calling up the family and being like, hey, I need some help with this, can you guys help? And depending on what your family has done in the past, they will probably be able to help you. Now, this is generally speaking going to be... Your mileage with this will vary depending on your family history and how your family is going to look. It's one of those problems of you might have to resolve some issues from your family if you do have heavy ancestor work. Ancestor work is not a major part of my practice. I am a ceremonial magician. I like to work with the stars and demons and things that are not related to me by blood. But For a lot of people, this is going to be something that they like to do. So, if you are one of these people, I highly recommend you look more into ancestor work and try that route. However, if you are not really interested in doing ancestor work because messy family history, or your family tree has some form of horrible thing that your ancestors would most likely hate you for, you can probably go ahead and just kind of skip the ancestor work. If you were still interested in necromancy, though, there are various other resources you can look up and you can look into that I will not be giving, because knowledge is best gained from seeking it, not from having it given to you directly. So, I have been Dave the Amateur Magus. Once again, if you enjoyed this video, support me over on Patreon. Looking forward to seeing everyone there, and I hope everyone is having a good day. If you're not having a good day, hope your day gets better. Take it easy, take care, and I will see you next time.